My mother called me the daughter she never wanted. I saved her life anyway. I'm Emily. I'm 35, and on Thanksgiving night, in front of 15 relatives, my own mother looked at me and said, "You were always the daughter I never wanted." 3 weeks later, I was the only person in that room who could keep her alive. This is not a revenge story. Not really. It's a story about what you do when the person who broke you is the same person you have the power to save, and about the cost of being the one who finally says the truth out loud. Welcome to Little Bunny Stories, where we tell quiet stories about families, about the love that wounds and the wounds that somehow teach us how to love differently. If a story ever made you feel less alone, that's why we're here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's walk through this one together. Here's my story. The morning I found out about my mother's cancer, I was changing a bedpan. Not hers. A patient's. Room 412, ICU, Northwestern Memorial. Mr. DeLuca, 78, post-op colon resection. I'd been a critical care nurse for 11 years, and I could read a chart the way some people read novels, looking for the story beneath the numbers. His vitals were stable. His color was improving. I was adjusting his oxygen when my phone buzzed in my scrub pocket. I don't answer personal calls on the floor. Rule number 1. But I saw the name, Claire, and something in my chest tightened. My sister called me twice a year, my birthday, which she forgot half the time, and Christmas, which was a duty call lasting exactly 4 minutes. A Wednesday in October wasn't on the schedule. I stepped into the supply closet, closed the door, and answered. Emily. Her voice had that texture it got when she was managing a crisis she didn't want to be managing. It's Mom. I waited. In my family, you learn to wait. Information was doled out like ration cards, never enough, never when you needed it. She's in the hospital, Northwestern actually, same building you're in probably. I looked through the supply closet door's small window out at the ICU bay I'd just left. The same building. My mother was somewhere in these walls, and I was changing bedpans 3 floors away, completely unaware. What's wrong? Kidney failure, they're saying. Claire paused, and I heard her cover the phone, muffled conversation. They're saying stage 4. Renal cell carcinoma, both kidneys compromised. I leaned against the shelf of saline bags. Stage 4, I knew what that meant. I'd watched patients go from that diagnosis to hospice in months, sometimes weeks. I'd held hands while families learned the difference between treatable and terminal. How long has she known? 2 weeks, she didn't tell anyone. Dad found her collapsed in the kitchen this morning. 2 weeks. My mother had known she was dying for 2 weeks and she hadn't called me, not that I expected her to. But the not calling still landed like a small stone in a still pond, ripples I couldn't stop feeling. What do they need? A donor. Claire's voice dropped to that whisper people use in hospital corridors, as if the words themselves were contagious. Neither of us is compatible. Dad's too old. Tom's got high blood pressure. They've tested the extended family, cousins, even Aunt Patricia, nobody matches. I closed my eyes. I knew where this was going before Claire said it. Emily, they need you to get tested. I didn't answer. The supply closet was cold, fluorescent lit, smelling of bleach and cardboard. I stood there in my navy scrubs with my name embroidered in white, E. Hartwell, RN, and I felt the old math clicking into place. The math of my childhood, where Emily was the variable that didn't matter until the equation needed solving. I'll think about it, I said. Emily, she's our mother. I know who she is, Claire. I know exactly who she is. I hung up, not because I was cruel, because I needed the 30 seconds of silence before I walked back onto that floor and pretended my hands weren't shaking. I didn't go see her that day, or the next. I told myself it was because I was working doubles. The ICU was short-staffed, flu season starting early, and I was picking up extra shifts to cover Noah's after-school program. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I was afraid. Not of the test, not of the surgery. I was afraid of standing in my mother's hospital room and feeling exactly what I'd felt my entire life. Invisible, insufficient, the daughter who took up space that had already been allocated to better children. Noah noticed. He's 7, but he's got that radar kids develop when they've only got one parent, the constant scanning for shifts in weather, the ability to read a mood from the way you stir mac and cheese. Mom, are you sad? He asked it on Thursday night, while we were doing his math homework at the kitchen table. Our kitchen. The small 1-bedroom apartment I'd rented after David died, the one with the window that looks out at a brick wall and the radiator that clanks at 3 a.m. David never saw this apartment. David never saw Noah turn 5 or 6 or 7. David died in a car accident on I-94 when Noah was 3, and some days I still reached for my phone to text him something funny I saw at work. I'm thinking about Grandma, I said. The mean one? I almost laughed, almost. She's not. She's complicated, baby. She never hugs me. Claire's mom hugs me. Claire's mom was our Aunt Judith, who lived in Milwaukee and sent Noah birthday cards with $5 bills and stickers. My mother had sent Noah a card once for his first birthday. She'd written happy birthday in her elegant cursive and signed it Grandma Margaret. No stickers, no $5, no mention of the fact that she'd never held him. Grandma Margaret is sick, I said. Very sick. Noah considered this with the gravity of a 7-year-old who'd already learned that sick sometimes meant gone forever. Are you going to make her better? I don't know if I can, sweetheart. But you're a nurse. You make people better. I pulled him onto my lap, feeling the sharp angles of his shoulder blades, the way he was growing too fast, eating me out of house and home on a nurse's salary. Sometimes people are too sick for me to fix. Sometimes the person who needs fixing doesn't want to be fixed by me. Noah looked at me with those brown eyes he got from David, wide, serious, unfairly perceptive. Then why would you try? Why would I try? The question my entire life could have been summarized by, why would I keep sending birthday cards to a woman who never acknowledged them? Why would I keep showing up to family dinners, where I was seated at the far end of the table, the folding chair they added at the last minute? Why would I keep hoping that this time, this visit, this gift would be the one that changed the math? Because, I said, and my voice cracked in a way I hated, sometimes you do the right thing even when the other person doesn't deserve it. Not for them, for you, because you need to know you're the kind of person who does the right thing. Noah nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but filing it away the way he filed everything in that vast, patient memory of childhood, where lessons settle like sediment and shape the riverbed years later. Okay, he said. But if she's mean to you, we can leave, right? Right, I said, we can always leave. I got tested on Friday, not because I was noble, because I couldn't sleep. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, not the face she had now, thin and yellowing in a hospital bed, but the face from my childhood, the face that looked at my report cards and sighed, the face that watched Claire's piano recitals with tears of pride and watched my science fair project with a glance at her watch. The testing was simple. Blood draw, tissue typing, cross-matching. I knew the protocol better than the lab tech who took my sample. I'd coordinated dozens of organ donor evaluations for patients. I knew the odds. The chance of a sibling match was roughly 50%. The chance of a parent-child match was lower, complicated by genetic recombination. I knew the science. I didn't know my own heart. Dr. Okonkwo called me Monday morning. I just dropped Noah at school and was sitting in my car in the parking lot, drinking coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. Emily. She used my first name because we'd worked together for 6 years, because she'd seen me cry in the break room after we lost a pediatric patient, because she knew my story in fragments the way colleagues do. You're a match. I didn't say anything. The car was cold. October in Chicago had turned sharp, the wind carrying winter early. Not just compatible, you're an excellent match. 6 out of 6 HLA antigens. I've only seen that in identical twins before. What does that mean? It means your kidney has the best possible chance of surviving in your mother's body. It means if you donate, her prognosis changes significantly. Without a transplant, we're looking at months. Maybe a year with aggressive dialysis. With your kidney properly managed, she could have 10 years. 15. 10 years. 15. My mother, who told me at 11 that I was the pregnancy that ruined her nursing school plans. My mother, who'd looked at my wedding dress and said it's simple, isn't it, in a tone that made simple sound like failure. My mother, who'd sent a condolence card when David died, a store-bought card with a pre-printed message, signed Margaret and Richard in her perfect cursive, no personal word, no phone call, no appearance at the funeral. 10 years of her life in my hands. I need time, I said. You have some, not much but some. Her function is declining. I'd recommend deciding within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I hung up and sat in the cold car and thought about the math. The math of my childhood, where Claire got new clothes and I got Claire's hand-me-downs. Where Tom got a car at 16 and I got a bus pass. Where my mother attended Claire's college graduation and Tom's law school commencement, but missed my nursing school pinning ceremony because she had a bridge tournament. I thought about the Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago, the last family gathering I'd attended. My mother had seated me at the far end of the table, next to Tom's new girlfriend, a woman I'd never met. She'd introduced everyone except me. "And this is Sarah, Tom's girlfriend. She's a paralegal. No, this is Emily, my daughter. No, Emily's a nurse." I'd sat there in my good sweater, the one I'd bought special for the occasion, and eaten my turkey in silence while the conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. I thought about Noah, asking why I would try to help someone who was mean to me. I thought about my grandmother, my father's mother, who died when I was 12. The only person in that family who'd ever made me feel like I had a right to exist. She'd lived in a small apartment in Skokie, and I'd visit her on Saturdays while my mother played bridge. She'd make me cinnamon toast and tell me stories about coming to America from Ireland at 19, alone, with $12 in her pocket. "You're strong, Emily," she'd say, brushing my hair with her silver brush. "Stronger than any of them. Don't you let them make you small." She'd left me the silver brush in her will. $5, her lawyer said. The brush was worth nothing. I still have it. I still brush Noah's hair with it sometimes, telling him the same stories, making him promise the same promise. I started the car and drove to work. I didn't tell anyone I was a match. Not Claire, who called twice more with increasing urgency. Not my father, who left one voicemail, his voice stiff and formal, asking me to consider the family. Not Tom, who sent a text, "Mom needs you, don't be selfish." As if selfishness was a word he had any right to use about me. For a week I went to work, came home, helped Noah with homework, made dinner, put him to bed, and sat in the dark living room with the silver brush in my lap. I looked at it and I looked at my phone and I looked at the photo of David on the bookshelf, him holding Noah at 2 weeks old, both of them asleep, David's hand bigger than Noah's entire torso. I thought about what David would say. He'd never met my mother. We'd eloped City Hall, 2 witnesses from his office, dinner at a Greek diner afterward. I'd told him about my family in fragments, the way you tell stories about a country you left because it was at war. He'd held my hand across the vinyl booth and said, "You don't have to go back, Em. You know that, right? You can build your own country." I'd built it, small, imperfect, but mine. This apartment, this job, this child, this life where I was seen, where I mattered, where my love wasn't measured against Claire's achievements or Tom's charm. And now my mother was dying, and the only bridge back to that old country was my own body. My own kidney. The part of me that filtered waste, that kept my blood clean, that worked silently and constantly without thanks or acknowledgement, the perfect metaphor, I thought bitterly, for what I'd always been in that family. On day 8, I made a decision, not the decision to donate, the decision to set terms. I called my father. Directly. Another rule broken in my family, you called Claire, who called Mom, who relayed messages to Dad with appropriate editorial commentary. Direct communication was for emergencies only. "Emily," he sounded surprised, not pleased, not displeased, just surprised the way you'd be surprised if a piece of furniture spoke. "I'm a match." Silence, then, what does that mean? It means I can donate a kidney. It means Mom lives if I choose to, if you choose to. He repeated it slowly, tasting the words. "Emily, she's your mother. I know who she is, Dad. I've known for 35 years. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do and what I need, and you're going to listen because this is the only time I'm going to offer." I laid it out. Clean, clinical, the way I'd explain a procedure to a patient. I would donate my kidney. I would undergo the surgery, endure the recovery, accept the risks, reduced kidney function for life, higher chance of hypertension, complications from anesthesia, the standard litany I'd recited to dozens of donors. In exchange, I wanted something that had nothing to do with medicine. I want Mom to tell the truth, in front of the family, at Thanksgiving dinner. I want her to admit that she treated me differently, that she made me feel like a mistake, that she looked through me my entire life like I was a window she didn't want to see through. I want her to say it, Dad. I want her to say it out loud where everyone can hear because I'm done carrying a truth that only I know. "Emily, your mother is dying." I know, that's why I'm asking, because dying people sometimes find the courage that living people don't have, and because I need to hear it before I give her a part of my body. I need to know she sees me, even if it's only once, even if it's only because she needs something from me. My father was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, "She won't do it, Emily, you know she won't." "Then she doesn't get my kidney, it's that simple." "It's not simple. It's your mother." "It should have been simple, Dad. It should have been simple 35 years ago when she chose which child to love and which to endure, but she made it complicated. And now I'm making it simple. Truth for a kidney, that's the trade." I hung up. For the first time in my life, I hung up on my father. And I felt not powerful, not victorious. Just tired. The tired of someone who's been carrying something too heavy for too long and has finally set it down, even if only for a moment. 2 days later, my mother called. I was making Noah's lunch, peanut butter sandwich, cut diagonally the way he likes apple slices, a note on a napkin that said, "Have a great day, I love you," when my phone lit up with her name. Margaret Hartwell. The name I'd learned to write in kindergarten, copying it from her driver's license because I wanted to be exactly like her. Before I learned that being like her meant being invisible to her. Emily, her voice was thin, weaker than I'd ever heard it, the voice of someone whose body was failing, whose authority was leaking away with her kidney function. Your father tells me you have conditions. I do. This is cruel, Emily, I'm dying. I know, and I'm sorry you're dying, but I'm not cruel, Mom. Cruel would be letting you die without offering. Cruel would be pretending the last 35 years didn't happen. I'm just asking for the truth. The truth you told me in 100 ways, but never in words. Never where anyone else could hear. What do you want me to say? That you didn't want me. That you resented me. That you looked at Claire and Tom and saw your children and you looked at me and saw a mistake. That you made me feel like I was taking up space that belonged to someone else. That you. My voice broke, and I hated it, hated the weakness, hated that she could still do this to me. That you never once, not one single time, made me feel like I was enough for you. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses against your eardrums. And if I say this, her voice was smaller now. If I say this, you'll give me your kidney. I'll give you my kidney either way, Mom, I already decided. But I won't give it quietly. I won't give it and pretend that we're a family that loves each other. If you want my kidney, you have to take my truth with it. You have to swallow it whole in front of everyone and let them see what this family really is. You're punishing me. No, I'm finishing something. I'm finishing the story you started when I was born, and I'm finishing it my way, with honesty, with witnesses, with the dignity of finally being seen. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just hung up, the way she always did, no goodbye, no acknowledgement that the conversation was ending. Just silence and the dial tone, and me standing in my kitchen with a peanut butter sandwich in my hand, wondering if I'd just destroyed the last bridge back to a country I never wanted to visit again. Thanksgiving was at my parents' house. The house in Winnetka where I grew up, the one with the wraparound porch and the oak tree I'd climbed as a child, the one that smelled of my mother's lavender candles and my father's pipe tobacco. The house where Claire had her own bedroom with a canopy bed, and Tom had a room with a desk for homework and shelves for trophies, and I had the small room over the garage that got too hot in summer and too cold in winter. I'd driven past that house 100 times since I moved out at 18. Never stopped. Never went in. The last time I'd been inside was 3 years ago, that Thanksgiving dinner where I was the window no one saw through. This year, I dressed carefully. Not for her approval, I'd given up on that long ago, but for myself. For the version of me who was going to walk through that door and demand to be seen. Navy dress, simple, professional. The silver earrings David bought me for our first anniversary. Low heels because I was already nervous enough without worrying about tripping. Noah wore his good pants and the sweater my friend Rachel had knitted for him, blue, with a small bunny on the chest. For little bunny, she'd said when she gave it to him, and he'd worn it until the elbows wore thin. Mom, are you scared? He asked in the car. Yes, baby, of Grandma, of what might happen, of what might not happen. But we're going to leave if she's mean, right? Right, we can always leave. He reached over and took my hand, his small fingers interlacing with mine. I think you're brave, he said. I'm not brave, Noah, I'm just tired of being quiet. That's brave, he said, and I didn't argue, because maybe he was right. Maybe the bravest thing isn't not being scared. It's being scared and speaking anyway. The house was full. 15 people, the full Hartwell complement, my parents, Claire and her husband Mark, Tom and his girlfriend Sarah, Aunt Judith and Uncle Robert from Milwaukee, 2 cousins I barely knew, the neighbors from next door who'd been practically family for 40 years. I walked in with Noah and the room went quiet. Not because I was unexpected, my father had told them I was coming, I could see it in their prepared smiles, but because I was different. Because I walked in like someone who knew her own weight, who wasn't apologizing for taking up space, who wasn't going to fold herself small to fit around the edges of this family's story. Emily. Claire came forward first, hugging me with the enthusiasm she used for public occasions. And Noah, look how big you've gotten. Noah hid behind my leg the way he did with strangers. Claire's smile flickered, not because she was hurt, but because she was performing hurt the way she performed everything. My father shook my hand, formal the way he greeted colleagues. Emily, good to see you. Dad, and then my mother. She was in the armchair by the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm room. She'd lost weight, I could see it in the sharpness of her cheekbones, the way her wedding ring hung loose on her finger, but her eyes were the same. The same pale blue, the same assessing quality, the same ability to look at me and see through me simultaneously. Emily, she didn't stand, she didn't offer her hand, she just said my name the way you'd say the name of a distant acquaintance you were obligated to acknowledge. Mom, you look. I look like I'm dying. Let's not pretend otherwise. The room shifted. Someone laughed nervously. Tom stepped forward, smooth as always, the golden child diffusing tension with charm. Mom, don't be morbid. Emily's here, let's be grateful. Yes, my mother said, looking at me. Let's be grateful. The word hung in the air, heavy with everything unsaid. Grateful for what? For my presence, for my kidney, for the opportunity to perform gratitude in exchange for survival. Dinner was served. The traditional Hartwell Thanksgiving, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce from a can because my mother believed homemade was showing off, sweet potatoes with marshmallows, the green bean casserole Aunt Judith always brought. I sat at the far end of the table, same seat as 3 years ago, same folding chair they'd added at the last minute. Noah sat beside me, picking at his turkey, watching the room with the careful attention of a child who knows the adults are performing something he doesn't understand. The conversation flowed around me. Claire's new promotion. Tom's latest case, he was a corporate lawyer, the kind who made more in a year than I made in 3. The neighbor's trip to Florida. Aunt Judith's bridge club. The safe topics, the approved narratives, the stories this family told about itself. I waited. I ate my turkey and my stuffing and I waited. Because I'd learned patience in this house, the patience of the overlooked, the patience of someone who knows that attention comes not to those who demand it, but to those who endure long enough to be the last one standing. After dessert, pumpkin pie, store-bought, my mother's contribution to the tradition of not trying too hard, my father stood. He tapped his water glass with his fork, the way he always did before speeches. I want to say something, he began, his voice carrying the slight tremor of age. Your mother and I, we've been blessed. 40 years of marriage, 3 children this family. And now we're facing something difficult, but we're facing it together. He looked at me. For the first time he looked directly at me, not through me, not past me. Emily has offered something extraordinary, something that, Dad, I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood, the sound sharp as a slap. Let me. The room went quiet. 15 faces turned toward me. My mother's face, pale and sharp. My father's, surprised and relieved in equal measure. Claire's, calculating, already preparing her response. Tom's, annoyed, his narrative interrupted. I looked at my mother. You wanted to know my conditions. Here they are, in front of everyone, because the truth shouldn't be private anymore. It shouldn't be something only I carry. Emily, not now, my mother said. Her voice had that edge, the steel I'd learned to recognize in childhood, the tone that meant compliance or consequences. Yes, now, because there might not be another now. Because you're dying, Mom, and I'm the only person in this room who can stop it. And before I do, before I give you a part of my body that I'll never get back, I need you to say what you've never said. I need you to tell them. Tell them what you told me when I was 11, pouring coffee on a Sunday morning. Tell them what you meant when you said I was the pregnancy that ruined your plans. Tell them why Claire had a canopy bed, and I had a room over the garage. Tell them why you never came to my nursing school pinning, why you sent a store-bought card when my husband died, why you've looked through me for 35 years like I was a window you didn't want to see through. My mother's face went white. Not the white of illness, something deeper, something that came from being seen too clearly, from having the story you told yourself exposed as fiction. You're being dramatic, she said. As always. No, Mom, I'm being honest. For the first time in this family's history, I'm being honest. And I need you to be honest too, not for me. I stopped needing things from you a long time ago, but for them. I gestured at the room, at Claire and Tom and Aunt Judith and the neighbors who'd watched me grow up. They deserve to know what this family really is. They deserve to know why I stopped coming to these dinners, why I eloped instead of having a wedding, why I built my own life far from here. They deserve to know that the daughter they never saw was the one who kept showing up anyway, hoping that this time would be different. Emily, please, my father said. His voice was broken, the formal tone gone. Not like this. How else, Dad? How else does it happen? If not like this, then never, and I'm done with never. I looked at my mother. She was gripping the arms of her chair, her knuckles white. Say it, Mom. Say what you've always known. Say that I was the daughter you never wanted. Say that you resented me from the moment you found out you were pregnant. Say that you loved Claire because she was your first, and you loved Tom because he was your son, and you endured me because you had no choice. Say it, not because it will change anything, but because it's true, and truth is the only thing I have left to ask for. The silence was absolute. No one moved. The fire crackled in the fireplace, the only sound in a room full of people who'd forgotten how to breathe. My mother looked at me, really looked at me the way she hadn't in 35 years. I saw something in her eyes, fear, yes, but also something else. Recognition. The dawning understanding that I was not the child she'd imagined, not the quiet, compliant, invisible daughter who would accept her place at the far end of the table. I was someone else. Someone she'd made, without meaning to, without wanting to. Someone who'd learned to demand space because she'd never been given any. You're cruel, she whispered. You're cruel and you're selfish and I'm honest, Mom, and if that's cruel, then what were you? She didn't answer. She just stared at me, her chest rising and falling with the effort of breathing, her body failing even as her pride held on. I picked up Noah's hand. We're leaving now. Emily, wait, my father said. The kidney. Kidney is still mine, Dad. It will always be mine. She can have it when she's ready to tell the truth, not before. I walked toward the door, Noah's small hand in mine, the room frozen behind us. At the door, I turned back. My mother was still in her chair, her face a mask of rage and grief and something I couldn't name. My father was standing, his hand outstretched, not reaching for me, just reaching. Claire was crying, the performative tears she'd learned from our mother. Tom was on his phone because Tom was always on his phone when things got real. Happy Thanksgiving, I said, and I walked out into the cold November night, Noah's breath warm against my hand, the stars sharp and clear above us. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in our apartment, on the couch that folded out into a bed for when Rachel visited, and I held the silver brush and I waited. For what? I didn't know. For the phone to ring. For the silence to break. For the story to continue or end. Noah slept in my bed, the way he did when he sensed I needed him close. His small body, warm and solid, the only thing in my life that had ever been completely mine, completely real, completely love without conditions. The call came at 6 a.m., my father's voice rough with sleeplessness. She wants to see you. When? Now, she's not doing well, Emily. The doctors say we need to move quickly. I'll come, but my terms haven't changed. I know, she knows, just come. I dropped Noah at Rachel's emergency, I said, and Rachel, bless her, didn't ask questions, just opened her door and pulled Noah inside with a bag of cookies and a promise of cartoons. I drove to Winnetka in the gray dawn, the lake invisible beyond the trees, the world quiet with the held breath of early morning. My mother was in her bedroom, the same room she'd shared with my father for 40 years, the same four-poster bed, the same curtains she'd chosen when I was a child. She was propped up on pillows, thinner than she'd been at Thanksgiving, her skin translucent, her eyes too large for her face. My father was in the chair by the window, looking older than I'd ever seen him. He stood when I came in, nodded at me and left the room, closing the door behind him, leaving us alone. I stood at the foot of the bed. Mom, Emily. Her voice was a thread barely audible. You came. I came. I thought you wouldn't after what I said, what I didn't say. I almost didn't. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. My mother crying. I'd never seen it, not when her own mother died, not when David died, not at any point in my entire life. Margaret Hartwell did not cry. It was a family law, unwritten but absolute. I was afraid of you, she said. I didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. From the beginning, from the moment I knew I was pregnant, I was 32. Claire was 8, finally in school full-time. I was going to go back to nursing school. I had the application filled out. I had a plan, and then you. She looked at me, her eyes focusing with effort. You weren't planned, Emily. You weren't wanted, not because you weren't. Not because there was anything wrong with you, because you were inconvenient. Because you represented everything I'd given up. Because every time I looked at you, I saw the life I wasn't living. You could have loved me anyway, I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. I gripped the bedpost to hide it. I know, she closed her eyes again. I know I could have, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how to love someone who reminded me of my own failures. Claire was easy, she was everything I'd been, everything I wanted to be. Tom was easy, he was the sun, the air, the simple narrative. But you were complicated, you were quiet, you were watchful, you were too much like me, the me I didn't want to be. You made me feel like a mistake. You were not a mistake. Her eyes opened, fierce despite her weakness. You were never a mistake. I was the mistake. I was the one who failed. And I couldn't admit it, because admitting it meant admitting that I'd wasted 35 years being cruel to the one person who kept showing up anyway. She reached out her hand, thin and blue-veined, toward me. I didn't take it, not yet. Why now? I asked. Why tell me now? Because I'm dying. Because the thing I was most afraid of, needing you, being seen by you, being vulnerable to you, is the only thing that can save me. And because... She laughed, a small, broken sound. Because you were right, about everything. About the bed, about the card, about the pinning ceremony, about all of it. And I was too proud to say so until I had nothing left but pride, and pride won't keep me alive. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Not the mother I'd wanted, not the mother I'd imagined in my childhood fantasies. The real woman, small and frightened and dying, who'd spent her life building walls because she was terrified of what would happen if she let anyone in. I'm not forgiving you, I said. Not yet, maybe not ever. What you did, it shaped me. It made me someone who doesn't trust easily, who expects to be overlooked, who apologizes for taking up space. You broke something in me, Mom, and I don't know if it can be fixed. I know. But I'm going to give you my kidney anyway. Not because you deserve it. Not because you've apologized. Because I'm not you. Because I can give something without expecting reciprocity, and because my son is watching. Because I need him to see that his mother is someone who does the right thing, even when it's hard. Even when it costs her. Even when the person she's helping doesn't deserve it. My mother's hand was still extended. This time I took it. Her fingers were cold, fragile, the bones too close to the surface, but they closed around mine with surprising strength. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. The surgery is hard. The recovery is harder. And when you wake up, you're going to have a piece of me inside you. Every time you feel it working, every time you breathe easy because my kidney is filtering your blood, I want you to remember this. Remember that I gave it to you. Remember that you didn't earn it. Remember that love, real love, doesn't have to be deserved to be given. I'll remember. You'd better, because I'm only going to tell you this once. I love you, Mom. I don't like you. I don't forgive you, but I love you because you're my mother, and because love isn't something you turn off like a faucet. It's something you carry, even when it's heavy, even when it hurts, even when you wish you could put it down. I've carried it for 35 years. Now I'm giving it shape. Literally. She was crying openly now, the tears tracking down her hollow cheeks, her body shaking with sobs she didn't have the strength to suppress. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry, Emily. I'm sorry for all of it. I know, I said. And I sat on the edge of the bed and held her hand while she cried, and I didn't cry with her because I'd done my crying alone, in cars and supply closets and dark living rooms, and this moment wasn't for my tears. It was for hers. The tears she'd never let herself shed, the grief she'd never let herself feel, the love she'd never let herself give. The surgery was scheduled for December 15th. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. 3 weeks of preparation, more tests, consultations, the endless bureaucracy of modern medicine. I took time off work, arranged for Noah to stay with Rachel during the hospital days, packed my bag with the things I'd need for recovery. My mother and I didn't speak much in those 3 weeks. There was too much to say and no language for it. Instead, I visited her at the house, not for long conversations but for presence. I'd sit in the chair by her bed and read, or work on my laptop, or just hold her hand while she dozed. Sometimes Noah came with me, and he'd sit on the floor and draw pictures, stick figures, mostly the way kids do, and my mother would watch him with a look I'd never seen before. Wonder, maybe, regret, the dawning understanding of what she'd missed. He's a good boy, she said once, while Noah was in the kitchen with my father making cookies with more enthusiasm than skill. He is. You raised him well, alone. I had help, friends, David's family, though they're in California, but yes, mostly alone. I should have. She stopped, shook her head. I should have done so many things. You should have, but you didn't, and we're here now. Why? She looked at me, her eyes clear despite the morphine. Why are you here, Emily, after everything? I thought about it, really thought about it, the way I'd thought about it in the dark hours of those 3 weeks. Because I don't want to be you, I said finally. I don't want to be someone who withholds love because it's hard, who punishes people for existing, who dies with a closed heart because she was too afraid to open it. I want to be someone who gives, even when giving costs. Even when the recipient doesn't deserve it. Even when it feels like I'm cutting pieces off myself to feed someone who starved me. That sounds like martyrdom. It sounds like love, Mom, the kind you never learned, the kind I'm teaching myself, one decision at a time. She didn't answer, but she held my hand tighter, and that was something. That was more than I'd ever had from her before. The surgery lasted 6 hours. I remember the pre-op room, the anesthesia mask, the count backwards from 100 that only reached 97 before the darkness took me. I remember waking in recovery, the pain sharp and specific in my lower back, the nurse's voice telling me to breathe, to cough, to move my legs. I remember my father's face, appearing above me like a moon, pale and worried. "It went well," he said. "Both of you, the kidney, it's working, she's stable." I remember closing my eyes and thinking, it's done. The part of me that filters, that cleans, that works silently without thanks, it's in her now. Let it work. Let it keep her alive. Let her have the years I bought her, and let her spend them knowing what they cost. The recovery was hard. Harder than I'd expected, though I'd warned dozens of donors about exactly this. The pain in my back, deep and persistent. The fatigue that made walking to the bathroom feel like a marathon. The emotional crash that came 3 days post-op, when the adrenaline faded and I was left with the reality of what I'd done and what I hadn't received in return. My mother was in a different wing, her own recovery monitored with the intensity due to a transplant recipient. I didn't see her for the first week. I was too weak to walk that far, and she was too vulnerable for visitors. We existed in parallel, two bodies healing from the same surgery, connected by the organ that now lived in her. When I finally saw her, on day 8 she was sitting up in bed. Color in her cheeks, real color, not the sallow yellow of kidney failure. Her eyes bright, focused, present in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Emily." She reached for my hand and I let her take it. "It's working, I can feel it, I can feel you inside me. I know, how are you, sore, tired, alive?" She laughed, the sound surprising both of us. "Alive, yes, we're both alive, because of you. Because of us. It took both of us, Mom. I couldn't have done it without your body accepting it. But you gave it when you didn't have to, when I hadn't earned it, when I'd done everything to make sure you wouldn't want to, I know." "Why?" She asked it again, the question she'd asked before, the question I was still answering. "Why did you give it to me?" I looked at her. At the woman who'd made me feel like a mistake for 35 years. At the woman who was now alive because of me. At the complicated, wounded, frightened human being who'd failed me in the most fundamental way a parent can fail, and who was now asking me to explain grace. "Because I could," I said. "Because I had something you needed, and having something someone needs creates an obligation only if you believe in obligation. I believe in something else. I believe in being the person my grandmother believed I could be, the person David believed I could be, the person Noah already thinks I am. And what person is that? Someone who doesn't withhold love because it's hard, someone who doesn't calculate worthiness before giving, someone who can look at the person who broke her and still see a human being worth saving." My mother was crying again. She did that now, in her new post-transplant life. The walls had come down, and the feelings she'd suppressed for decades were flooding through. Overwhelming, uncontrollable, real. "I don't know how to be what you need," she said. "I don't know how to be a mother to you. I'm 67, Emily. I'm sick, I'm weak, I'm starting from less than zero." "Then don't be my mother," I said. "Be my friend. Be someone who shows up, even when it's awkward. Be someone who asks how I am and listens to the answer. Be someone who remembers my birthday without Claire reminding you. Be someone who sends Noah a card with stickers because he loves stickers. Start small. Start with what you can do, not with what you think you should be." "I can do that," she whispered. "I can try." "Trying is enough," I said. "For now, trying is enough." That was 2 years ago. My mother is still alive. The kidney is functioning well, not perfectly, but well enough. She takes her immunosuppressants, keeps her appointments, follows the regimen with the precision of someone who knows what survival costs. We talk now, more than we ever did. Not about the past, that territory is still mined, still dangerous, still requires careful navigation, but about the present. About Noah's school, my work, her garden, my father's retirement. She sends Noah cards now. Real cards with stickers and sometimes $5 bills. He keeps them in a box under his bed, the way I used to keep my grandmother's letters. She comes to our apartment sometimes, for dinner, simple meals, because she tires easily, because our apartment is small, because we're still learning how to be in each other's space without the old patterns taking over. It's not healed. I want to be clear about that. What she did to me, the years of invisibility, the systematic withholding, the message that I was insufficient, that doesn't heal with a kidney and an apology. I still have days when I look at her and feel the old rage, the old grief, The old certainty that I will never be enough for the one person whose enoughness mattered most. But I also have days when I look at her and see something else. A woman who was broken by her own mother, who passed that breakage down because she didn't know how to stop it, who is now, finally, painfully, imperfectly, trying to learn. A woman who is alive because of me and who knows it, and who carries that knowledge with a weight that sometimes makes her quiet, sometimes makes her cry, sometimes makes her reach for my hand in the middle of a conversation and hold on like she's drowning. I'm not drowning. That's the thing I've learned. I'm not drowning because I learned to swim in waters she never entered. I learned to love from people who loved me first, my grandmother, David, Rachel, Noah. I learned that my worth isn't determined by my mother's ability to see it. I learned that I can give without losing, that generosity isn't depletion, that love can flow in both directions without requiring balance. Last month, my mother gave me something. A small box, wrapped in paper she'd chosen carefully, blue, my favorite color. Inside was a necklace, silver, with a small pendant shaped like a kidney. I had it made, she said, her voice shy, uncertain, the voice of someone trying a language she's not fluent in. To remind both of us. I wear it sometimes. Not always, sometimes it's too heavy, too loaded, too much like carrying the surgery around my neck. But sometimes I put it on and I feel the weight of it and I remember. I remember the supply closet, the cold coffee, the phone call from Claire. I remember the Thanksgiving dinner, the walk out into the November night, Noah's hand in mine. I remember the bedroom in Winnetka, my mother's hand reaching for mine, the tears she'd never cried before. I remember the surgery, the recovery, the slow, uncertain building of something new from the ruins of something old. I remember that I am the daughter she never wanted, and I am also the daughter who saved her life. Both things are true. Both things coexist. And the coexistence is the story, not the revenge, not the redemption, but the complicated, messy, human truth of what happens when the person who broke you becomes the person you choose to save. If you're listening to this, and someone made you feel like the family mistake, hear me, you're not. Your worth was never theirs to define. And if you choose to walk away, that's valid. If you choose to stay and fight for your place, that's valid too. If you choose to save them, or let them save themselves, or simply exist in the space you've carved out for yourself, all of it is valid. The only wrong choice is the one that makes you smaller than you are. The only wrong choice is accepting a story about yourself that someone else wrote, without reading it first, without deciding if it's true. I didn't save my mother to earn her love. I saved her to prove to myself that I was already love, with or without her. That my capacity to give wasn't dependent on my capacity to receive. That I could be the person my grandmother saw in me, strong, generous, whole even when the person who should have nurtured that strength failed to do so. That's my story. If it spoke to you, drop a comment. Hit subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're enough, that they've always been enough, that no one's mistake can define them unless they let it. I'm Emily. I'm 37 now. I have one kidney, one son, one mother who's still learning, and one life that's mine, completely, finally, irrevocably mine. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. See you in the next story.